Right, let's have a look at Old School Tactical. Eastern Front, 1941 to 1942, Volume 1. I backed this in Kickstarter and I've had this a while, but I've never played it before because the map is just so utterly massive. You need to get an extension to your table for this thing. So I've had to completely rearrange everything to get space to get this out, but it is worth it. Guaranteed it is worth it. So I will move the box, which is also massive, out of the way. The box is about 2.5 inches deep. I shall move that out of the way and show you this. The map is, as I say, huge and wide. It is about 3.5 feet wide and it's about 2.5 feet in depth, we'll call it. Obviously I won't be able to keep everything on screen at the same time, so we're only going to use this section of the map here, this little rectangle. So the stuff that you won't see most of the time are all these counters that are in a bit of a mess. This little sheet, which is from Board Game Geek, it's just to keep track of points, that kind of thing. And two player aids. Two player aids, just tables and stuff. So I'm going to mostly zoom in on this bit. I do have some cards here. You get a card for each of the different vehicles. Again, it's just to kind of give you tables and that kind of idea. But I'll zoom in and I'll let you see these. Right, this is the Russian side of things, and I've marked these on the map. These are the 5 hexes that all these guys have got to start in. We have trucks, tanks, shock, rifle, a sergeant, light machine gun, and another couple of tanks. Now, the reason why we have these little dinky cards here is we have values here that are how many hexes at the top there, how many hexes away your target is, what you need to roll to actually get a hit in yellow there, yellow box, and then this is your firepower number, the red number. The other information at the bottom though is important because the BA-10, these two guys, they do not take riders. It tells you there, no riders. So we cannot put troops on those tanks. So that's something. And the trucks, we can have passengers, but the passengers are exposed, which is these guys. So we're going to have to rearrange all these guys. We can put, troops on tanks, and we're going to have to fit all of this into those 5 hexes, which is not going to be easy because you can only have one of these guys on a tank, and you could include a tank, one guy here, a sergeant, and a light machine gun. But while there's passengers on the tanks can't fire, and neither can the people on the tank. So you've got to pile them up, move them, and then split them up as quick as possible so that everybody can actually fire. So that's tricky. That took me a while to get the hang of because I just couldn't get my head around it. But I think I've sussed it. I'll probably screw it up, but I think I've sussed it. But that is a quick look at the Russians. Let's have a look at the Germans. This is the Germans. Same idea. We have 5 hexes here that I've marked, and we have all of this to squash into those 5 hexes. But it's worse for the Germans because these guys, these tanks, can take passengers. We have 4 guys here, light machine gun and a lieutenant. But these 3 vehicles cannot take passengers. So I'm going to have to try and work something out there. But again, you can have a tank and these guys. You can also have a tank and one of these in the same hex, but they can't move together. They've got to move separately. So that was one thing that kind of mixed me up at the start, was they're just in the same small area on the map. If you imagine like this, it just means that you've got a tank in there with this guy. They just happen to be sharing the same area, but they cannot move together. So if I move, it may well happen, if I move 2 vehicles at the same time, that is not the done thing. And these guys have cards as well. Same again. Distance to your target and the number that you need to roll or higher, and your firepower. Right, let me show you the map. And before I forget, how do I know where to set things up? Because we have a handy dandy scenario booklet. And hopefully without messing everything up here, this just gives you the rules for the scenario. And we're going to do this one, a deadly race. And I may not do the whole thing, but I'll certainly do a good few turns. Tells you here, German forces, which ones to use, which counters to use, any kind of setup instructions. Tells you there where to set them up. And impulse dice is how many dice they're going to roll to get impulse points. I'll come to that later anyway. Gut check is a number that we're going to use to see whether they get shaken or broken, that kind of thing. Russian forces, same idea. Markers to use, set up. Again, 3 impulse dice. Their gut check is 7 for the Germans, 9 for the Russians. Up here, bit of blab about what we're going to do. Map 1, because there's 2 ginormous maps in that box. Map coordinates, and it tells you the ones to use, and that is why I have a marker there and a marker there. That's the very right hand edge. The Russians basically want to get along the road. In fact, it just tells you there, control hex is that one, turns 8, and I've got that marked in the sheet. Couple of special rules, but nothing much, and that is basically it for the scenario. Highest total of casualty and victory points determines the winner at the end. Basically, in short, what it comes to is that the Russians are going to be here, Germans will be here, the Germans are on a little patrol, the Russians are making a mad dash to get past here and up this road, off the map. The Russians want off the map. The Germans are going to spot them and try and put a stop to that. The Germans want to take that control point. So Russians want off the map. Germans want that and to obviously stop the Russians. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to set it up and I'm going to try and not screw it up. Famous last words. Right, so here's what I've got. I have a truck at the back here, and I have a whole bunch of pretty much a tank with a rifle unit, and then under it is another vehicle. Need to remember not to move both vehicles at the same time. That is not allowed. For the Germans, same idea. Rifles on tanks and a vehicle below. The Germans have 3 vehicles but 4 rifle units. So this guy really has no ride. He is just, I don't know, we may have to just come back and pick him up at some point. Right, there's a whole bunch of turn sequence events. First is turn marker, which I have done. Reinforcements, we don't have any. Attaching leaders or support weapons. I've already put leaders on there, so this is them and now officially attached. Smoke counters, none. Scenario rolls, none for this particular scenario. They're in the book, if any. Free rally and bog rolls, nothing yet. Initiative roll, we do need to do that. This is who's going to go first. 2 dice each. And it will be obviously red dice for the Russians, black dice for the Germans. 2 each to see who is going to go first. And it is going to be the Russians, 5 against 4. And impulses, 3 dice each, that tells you that in the scenario. So let's see what they're going to get. Okay, 9 for the Germans and only 5 for the Russians. So 9 for the Germans, 5 for the Russians, and those impulse points are pretty much what they're going to spend to move across the map and fire, that kind of thing. Okay, we are now ready to start moving people. Right, Russians first. They have 7 impulse points against the Germans 9. If you have less than the other person, you can pass for free because you have less impulse points. So the Russians could pass, but they won't. We'll go for it. Let's see. We are going to move this tank and his passenger. We are going to go up the road for half a point. So that's going to be half and then 1. We're going to say another half, 1.5. Turn, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, and stop there. And we'll use one of these handy dandy little markers, which has got moved and fired on one side. Now, they have moved. They cannot move the rest of this turn. They can fire or do something else, but they cannot move. So, let's move to the Germans. They're going to do something similar. They're going to take this guy, or vehicle with passengers, and they're going to move half, 1, 2, 3, let's see, 3, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, and stop there. There's obviously better ways to go, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes and all that jazz. Now, these guys have passengers on them. While you have a passenger, you cannot open fire, and your passengers cannot open fire either. Hence why these guys can't fire at each other yet, but these guys that are coming next, they can fire because they don't have passengers. So, the Russians. Don't know if I remembered to mention it, but there are little triangles on some of these. Triangle tells you which way you're facing and what's your front and what's your back. Because if you're hit from the back, you have a lesser or a better chance of taking damage than from the front. So, red arrow first. And we will say this guy is going to go this way. So he's going to go 1, 2, but he has to stop. Why does he have to stop? I'm going to mark it as a 2, otherwise I'll forget. Why does he have to stop? Because this German guy here, he is facing up the road here. He can see this guy and can use what's called opportunity fire, because nothing's obstructing him and he can see him. So this guy is going to say, wait a minute, I want to fire at this guy. So even though it's not their turn, the Germans are going to use an impulse point, opportunity fire on this guy who's just suddenly appeared. This guy is a 251/9. This chap here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes. He needs to roll 2 dice, 8 or more, to get a hit on that guy. And he gets exactly an 8. So he has a firepower of 3 against this guy. Now he's firing on his front. Benefit of the doubt and all that jazz. This guy's a 2. So 3 against 2. 3 minus this guy's 2, which goes then on the +1 on the vehicle combat table. Right. I don't think there's any modifiers for it. Not that I can see. So this guy needs to get as high a number as possible to hit that guy and damage him. 5. A 5 gets him absolutely nothing. Fresh air. As good as that. So, he has fired. This guy was not hit, so he can keep moving. So he's done 2. He's going to do, we'll say, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Move to there. Done. Even though they took an opportunity fire, it's still the Germans' turn next. So this guy is going to move. He is going to move, we will say 1, 2, but has to stop. Why does he have to stop? Because this guy can fire, because opportunity fire. So it goes both ways. So while this guy is using a point, the Russians are going to use another point to fire upon the guy who fired upon them. That means that this guy has used a second impulse, which means he is now used. Means that he can't do anything else this turn. So, BA 10. He's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he needs an 8 or more. 8 or more to hope to hit this guy. Gets exactly an 8. So he gets firepower of 2. This guy has a firepower of 2. So that's 0 on the table. This guy's already moved. So he gets a -1 on the dice for move and fire. So, wow, he pretty much gets a kill for that. He rolls, in fact, an 11 because of the -1, which is completely destroyed. So in no time, we have a tank wreckage. Now, that costs them 1 casualty point, which goes to the Russians. Now, we roll another dice. If they can get a 6, the tank crew survives. And they don't. Tank crew is wiped out, so that's a 2nd casualty point that goes against them and goes to the Russians. So that guy was quite right to fire. Definitely did his side good. I'll also mention, you can't use it at the moment, but the Russian tanks have a secondary weapon which they can fire on soft targets like people. And he can't use it, there's nobody to fire on, but it's something that I always forget, so I'll mention it up front. Right, okay, we have 1 flaming wreckage already, and it is now officially the Russians' turn. They only have 3 points left because they've used it up with the opportunity fire and stuff, so they are going to move more people in, namely these guys. Oh, tank. 1, 2, 3, 4, let's see, 5, and let's see, it is a track vehicle. A track vehicle through brush takes 2, so that would be 7 if they move into there, and we'll leave it there. So he's moved. So the Russians only have 2 left. Germans have 6 left. They are going to... let's see, we'll bring in more people. Bring in these guys. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 4, 5, and 6, 7 to there. Done. Back to the Russians. They only have 2 points left. Germans have 5, so the Russians are going to pass. And it goes back to the Germans. They are going to, let's say, go for this move, where the moved counts towards that tank. There happens to be people on it. They still have their own movement if they want. So they are going to unload from the tank, which will cost 1. Then they're going to go 2, 3 to there. And stop. They can only go 4, so they don't have enough to get into the woods. That would cost 2. 4 left for the Germans. Back to the Russians. They have 2. And they're going to bring in this guy. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, we'll say 7. And stop there. Germans, 4 left. They are going to bring in another tank, another vehicle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say 5, 6, 7, 8. Done. Russians only have 1 turn left. They're going to pass. So it's back to the Germans. They are going to move in more people. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 to turn. And Russians only have 1 left. They're going to use it to bring in another vehicle of people. Why not? What the hell? 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. We'll say 5.5. We'll stop there with 5.5. Good markering system, eh? So they're moving. But this guy fancies his chances. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He can fire 10. In fact, no, he can't. He can't fire because he's got passengers. I take it back. So there's no firing from him. So this guy can keep going. 5.5. 5.5. In fact, we'll say he stops there on 5.5. What the hell? Stops there. Done. So the Russians are done. Germans have 2 left. And we'll say they're going to take the chance, unload these guys. In fact, I should have marked that one moved. These guys are going to go 1, 2, 3. Germans have 1 left. They're going to try and fire on that tank. So we have a 2F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Needs 7 or more to hope to hit that tank. And he is going to go for the tank, not the people on it. He could if he wanted, but he's going to go for the tank. Gets a 7, and it's a fail. Needs an 8 or more. So this guy has used his second, and he is used. There's no more impulse points left. So that is that round pretty much done. There's no melee because nobody entered hexes with each other. And then we remove markers. So need to remove all these. And see the state of play after turn 8. Again, this is kind of weird in that it counts down to 1. So, the Russians have still got a bunch of people back here. Germans have a couple of bits and bobs here, but they already have a wreckage and a tank crew gone. So, that is the end of turn 8. Next one, turn 7. And I'll see you for turn 7.